A popular DJ would be run down in the middle of the night in an act of random violence. Thankfully, his killer loved to talk. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Lee Selwyn. Viewer discretion is advised. Before I get started, hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok, where I'm more known. I have about 3 million followers over there. That will be linked in my link tree in the description of this video below. It'll also pop up here at some point a couple of times in the video, so please feel free to follow there as well. In the link tree below, you'll also find my merch store. We do ship all over the entire world. If there's a case you want me to cover, just email me. My email will be listed below in the description as well, or it's makingatruecrimerertwo.com. And all you have to do is email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to my list. There's about 5,300 names on there. It may take a while for me to get to that case because I pick my cases at random, but I will get there eventually. But at any rate, let's get into today's case. Lee Michael Selwyn was born on June 24th, 1962 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. By the time he was about 14 or 15 years old, he developed a humongous love for music and rock and roll, which would eventually lead him to the life of being a DJ. And he would at some point move to Los Angeles, California. He lived kind of in that Hollywood area where he became a popular, kind of well-known DJ amongst the nightclub crowd there. He was also a part of a motorcycle riding group. They weren't a gang, but he had purchased his first motorcycle like years prior to this, and his mom would say that at first she was really apprehensive about him being on a motorcycle because obviously, you know, they have been known to be dangerous, especially if, you know, ridden wrong or used recklessly. But she would say that Lee was always very, very careful on his motorcycle. He took every precaution. He never, you know, drove it crazy. He just wanted to ride a motorcycle, and that's basically what he did. And so he was a very responsible motorcycle rider. But he kind of joined this like small group of friends that would, every night or so, they would go out on their motorcycles and kind of just, you know, drive around the city of Los Angeles, usually in the very late hours. So we're talking like midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. So that brings us to the beginning of this case when Lee is 26 years old. He is DJing in Hollywood. It was October 8th, 1988. He had done his thing at the nightclubs that night, and then when that was over with, at approximately 1 or 2 in the morning, he and 3 of his friends would get on their motorcycles and do what they did almost every night, and they would ride around the city. The group of 4 would go 2 by 2, so you had 2 people in front, the other 2 riders in the back, and they were just sort of following each other around. One of Lee's friends, Robert, who I guess would go by Rob, would say that out of nowhere, all of a sudden, this truck comes out of just like the shadows and begins to drive fast next to this group of 4 who is riding their motorcycles. And the guy in the truck is just kind of being reckless about it and being kind of an asshole. The guy in this truck would then swerve into the lanes with the motorcycle riders and almost appearing like he was trying to run them over or run them off the road or cause some kind of harm to them. Robert and the others did not know who this person was. They didn't recognize the vehicle, and they see the guy roll down his window, and he just starts screaming at them, and he starts laughing at the 4 men. So when they get to a red light, the 4 friends and their motorcycles, they stop at the red light, and so does the guy in his truck. And so Robert looks into the guy's window and says, what are you doing? Like, are you trying to kill us? Is that what you're trying to do? And so Rob got a really good look at this guy, and he said he had this just insane look in his eyes. As a matter of fact, this is a composite drawing of what he described the man looked like. And dear God, if that is what he looked like at the time, that's horrifying. That would give me nightmares for the remainder of my natural life. But this guy just was continuing to laugh at them, and then he spit in Rob's face. And so Rob is like, whoa, dude. And so Rob reacts by punching the dude's side mirror on the driver's side and completely breaks it off the car. And then he, like, on his motorcycle, he started to kick the guy's truck. Rob says the dude just looked like a complete nut job. This guy was off his rocker crazy. He just looked insane. And then at one point, the guy reached down in his truck and it looked like he was trying to grab a gun. Now, the guy had rolled his window back up, but when Rob sees this motion, he then takes his fist and he punches it through the guy's window and it shatters the window. The dude starts like growling at him and just starts like laughing more, and he's just super unsettling. And so once the window was broken, the guy in the truck, he zooms forward into the intersection. The light's still red. He then flips a really fast U-turn and begins to face the 4 guys in the motorcycles. And Rob looks at the other 3 and like, this guy's going to try to kill us. He's going to run us over. So, and that's kind of what the guy starts to do. He starts to drive his car towards the motorcycles. But then the 4 split up and they just rode past him. And then the guy did another flip, another U-turn. Then he began to chase them again. And so Rob and one of the other riders turns right. And then one of the other ones, I think, goes straight. And then Lee, he veers left at this next intersection. Now, the guy in the truck who is still like going crazy after all of them, I guess he maybe didn't realize which one was which, or maybe he didn't care. But he turned his car left, which is the direction that Lee Selwyn went. Now, according to witnesses, the streets are pretty much bare at this time of night. It's really sort of just open road. But there are people outside who see this happening, and they see Lee on his motorcycle flying down the road because there's a dude in the truck who was chasing after him at top speed. And he is like getting close to his bumper, trying to hit Lee in the back of the motorcycle. Witnesses state that these two are going anywhere between 60 to 100 miles per hour at some point. This chase ensues for the next 5 miles. They're chasing each other, or the guy in the truck is chasing Lee for 5 miles. And this was across 30 city blocks. The dude in the truck was relentless. Lee has always been a pacifist. He has always been someone who does not like to fight. Even if someone were to hurt him in some way, he usually just said, okay, and then kind of backed away. He didn't like confrontation. He didn't like any of this. But he became a random target of this insane lunatic in the truck, either because the guy in the truck thought he was Robert, or the guy just was a lunatic and didn't care who he went after at that point. Chase would eventually end because the guy in the truck would end up getting next to Lee and swipe him, and then Lee, at very high speeds, crashes into a phone pole, and the motorcycle spins out of control, but then Lee is thrown through the air. They believe he's thrown, based on where he was later found, about 180 feet, and then he landed on the street. He would end up having a severe skull fracture amongst other pretty bad injuries. An ambulance was called. The guy in the truck had already gone off. He was gone in the wind. The ambulance was called. They rushed him to the hospital, Lee, but unfortunately, he was already just too far gone, and he would not survive the night. And so 26-year-old Lee Selwyn was pronounced dead. This really kind of just shocked the community, especially kind of the nightclub community where Lee was very popular, being a DJ and whatnot. And this really kind of just hit hard. And nobody knows who this guy in the truck was. And nobody knows why he wanted to start this whole thing. Why was he acting the way he was acting? And sure, Rob reacted in a harsh way by punching out the guy's mirror, but the dude was already a menace. The dude was already trying to swipe these people off the road. So good for Rob for punching out the window. But, I think some people would say, well, maybe this was Rob's fault because maybe he started the violence part of this. But the reality is he didn't. He was just reacting to what the crazy lunatic was already doing. Lee would have a funeral that so many people attended, like hundreds upon hundreds of people went to his funeral service. He was such a well-liked guy, and they even had a tribute concert to him to honor him and his life. And they even got like popular people to attend it. Billy Idol and Julian Lennon were there, and all there to help and pay tribute to him. But meanwhile, as you know, they're laying him to rest, police are just trying to figure out who the hell this crazy, insane killer is. But they're having no luck. They have a vague description of the guy, what he may look like. They put the composite drawing out there on the news for everyone to see, but it doesn't generate any hits. You also had this like stigma going around that like, well, they're in a motorcycle gang, so they asked for it. But the thing is they weren't a motorcycle gang. They were just four friends who looked a little crazy and just so happened to ride motorcycles. They weren't a gang. They were just friends driving around. It didn't matter if they were on bicycles, if they were in vehicles, if they were what they were on. They were just four dudes. Also, none of them deserved that. Lee didn't deserve that. Lee wasn't even the guy who gave the driver problems, but Lee was the one targeted in the end. The three friends plus other witnesses described the truck as being a two-toned color truck. It was either like a Ford Bronco 2 or possibly a Chevy Blazer. It had like red and white colors to it. Police were going around to every auto body shop they could find because the guy did have a smashed, driver's side window and a broken driver's side mirror, which, you can't drive around without having that. So they assumed the guy would have taken it in. And so they were looking all over the place and trying to search all the auto body shops to see if anyone like that came in to have their car repaired. They had no luck. And the car was never really spotted ever again. So either the guy stopped driving it or had it fixed in some other capacity and maybe changed the colors of the car. A lot of things could have happened, but they never found it. This case airs in January of 1989 on Unsolved Mysteries. But even that doesn't really generate a lot of tips at the time. But that episode would re-air on the Lifetime network in March of 1993, and then that is when they actually got some tips. They got a phone call from someone in, I might say this wrong, Moultrie, Georgia, in 1993. So this caller calls the Unsolved Mysteries tip line, and they say that there is a man who is currently in prison who talked about and bragged about how he one time ran some motorcycle dudes off the road in Los Angeles. And so once the person saw the Unsolved Mysteries episode, they're like, holy, that's a very specific story. And here it is. And oh my God, the description, the picture kind of looks like this dude. And so when police find out who this prisoner is, they go to Georgia. His name is Franklin LeGrand Perkins, and he is 36 years old, and he is absolutely terrifying. There is something about his face, his eyes, that are just nightmare-inducing. And I don't know, maybe he had kind of a bushier beard back in this case first happened, but he only had kind of like that mustache look to him now, but Jesus, it looks very similar to the drawing. So here's the thing. They had this testimony of the person who said that he had confessed to it a couple of times while in prison. That's really all they had. So they took his image and they showed it to the three motorcycle friends of Lee's, especially Robert, since he was the one who got the best look at him. And he immediately said, that's the guy. That's uncanny. That is him. And I want to say they did find out that he was driving a vehicle at the time that was pretty much the vehicle that was in the description of this incident. But they didn't really have any physical evidence to actually connect him to this murder. But they were still able to charge him with second-degree murder based on the fact that he had allegedly confessed a couple of times, and that Robert had identified him as definitely the guy who did this, and the fact that he had a similar car or the same car. So they were able to charge him. Now, he was in prison for, I guess, the possession of a firearm as a felon, and he was serving a 5-year sentence in Georgia for that. He was due to be released very, very soon. So luckily, they were able to get him while still in prison. So in 1994, he would be convicted of the murder of Lee Selwyn. And he was given a life sentence with a possibility of parole after 15 years. And you may wonder, why is he even given an option for parole? Again, this is a case where he's the guy, but they don't have that solid physical evidence to definitely say he's the guy. So sometimes sentences go a little bit lighter when you don't have that concrete evidence. But he was eligible for parole sometime around 2005, and he was denied. In 2020, I think he asked for parole again, plus also tried to appeal for a different sentence, and he lost that as well. And as far as I know, Franklin Perkins is still rotting in a prison cell. He could be there the rest of his life. It doesn't mean that he's, going to be released at any point. It's just that he could continue to ask for parole. Hopefully he's there forever, because honestly, the dude, he just seems like a terrifying guy. He seems reckless and like he would do this too, because this was a random killing. He had no clue who these 4 men were. He had never met them before. He had no grudge against them beforehand. Nothing. He just instigated them on the road. He tried to drive them off the road for no reason at all. He just did it. And he caused harm to them, which then one of them retaliated, and then that led to more to this murder. But the dude's unstable, clearly unwell. And so hopefully he's rotting in a prison cell for a very, very, very long time. And thankfully, Lee Selwyn got the justice he very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe. Follow me over on TikTok, sell merch, recommend a case to my email address, which is all in the description below. And until the next video, the next case, which will be Monday, depending on when you're watching this. You may be watching this in the future. Well, technically you are watching this in the future because I'm currently in the past. That makes you time travelers, technically. Or does it make me stupid? It might make me an idiot. I'm not 100% sure, but you may be time travelers watching this in the future. But it'll be the present for you, and I'm talking in the past, which means you are watching something from the past. I'm going somewhere with this, which means I'm a lunatic. That's not the direction I was trying to go. I'm crazy. No? Future time travel. What are the winning lottery numbers? Just any of them. Can you give them to me? Well, actually, you can't, because you can't communicate with me. Well, you can leave a comment in the future, which will be the present, which will be, okay, listen. All right, here we go. So if you multiply the quantum physics of the